somewhere on this earth that corresponds to the Eastern concepts of some sacred island in the Gobina. This in the West was the place of the red stone pipe quarry. Here it was that the pipe stems was quarried by all the tribes in order that they might make the pipe of peace, which is the symbol of their altar. And no matter how much war there might be among tribes, or how either men guarded or discarded each other, they must always enter into the place of the pipe quarry in brotherhood. For this was the place that the Great Spirit had set aside for men to make the symbols of their religion. And these must be guarded and served always with respect and fraternity. In the presence of their God, no men could raise their arms in violence. Then below the earth there was another world, a strange world that the Indian did not understand very well. But to him this underworld was not a place of punishment. The Indian had no place of punishment. I asked an Indian once why he didn't believe that there was a hell or place of punishment, as the missionary said. He smiled very frankly and said, I don't think we deserve to go to such a place. Therefore, why should we imagine that there is one? All Indians are good. Therefore, they don't worry about these things. It might be a little oversimplification, but it is still a pleasant thinking. Whereas in our way of life, nearly everyone either goes there or is sent there by somebody else. In fact, I have been told on fair authority that all the best people are there. But this other world, to the Indian, seems to be a sort of subterranean laboratory. For it is here that the grasses learn to grow. It is here that the great salt mother lives. It is under the earth that the spirit lives who must make things to be green and the flowers to blossom. The Indian's afterworld is not really under the earth for the most part. It is in a kind of shadow twilight, somewhere between the earth and the sky. And the stars are the campfires of the brave warriors who have gone before. But they still have this idea of three worlds. A world of things beneath, where little creatures live, and where the earth mother dwelt, Mother Nature herself. And the servant of the earth mother was the serpent, because the serpent went down into its hole in the ground and whispered to the earth mother the messages of men. So the serpent was the messenger to the earth, and the phoenix was the messenger to the sky. Of course, the phoenix is called the thunderbird. Now we have a threefold universe, and over this universe, great powers forever ruling. This is the same universe that we have in other parts of the world. Now, how were these initiation rituals thought of or practiced in these tribes? We may divide our American Aboriginal people into about three broad groups for our present purposes. Let's not forget there were many languages and probably nearly 200 essential cultural groups north of the Mexican border here in this country. But for general purposes, we can divide them into about three. One was the Plains Indians, a completely nomadic people. They were a strong, vigorous people because they were constantly moving. Therefore, they never had to live with their own refuge, which became the basis of sickness among practically all ancient peoples. The moment they become stationary, the moment they settle into some abode, there are problems which the primitive mind could not cope with. And we also then have a lessening of vitality among the people. So the Plains Indians were among the most active and robust of our Indians. Then along the eastern seaboard, we had those Indians that had become involved in the great league of the Iroquois nation and were what we might almost call civilized Indians. Civilized in the sense that they already had practically all of the basic principles of self-government, of education, of commerce, of social equity, and things of that nature before the coming of the white man. Then we have in our southwest areas the Pueblo Indians, or the house-dwelling Indians, that formed comparatively permanent habitations and began to develop a much more intense social culture, particularly involving the problems of marriage across the Pueblo and things of that nature. In the Plains Indians, the religious rituals were either part of the daily life of the people, or, as in the case of the Medes and of the Ojibwe Nation, temporary structures used for religious purposes, similar to the tabernacle in the wilderness used for the Jewish people. Your Eastern Indian had his long house in which his entire religious and political philosophy could be evolved, and already had reached the point where the long house had become a kind of pre-university, and the youth of all the tribes shared in certain educational adventures in connection with learning the citizenship of their tribe. In the Pueblo Indian areas, culture developed very rapidly, and in the average Pueblo, a number of secret societies formally came into existence. These secret societies pertain to many subjects, of which perhaps the most important might be the fertility society, the war society, the societies which had to do with healing and medicine, and the societies which had to do with hunting. These were the ones that perhaps were the most versatile, and there were also, in most instances, one or more of these borderline societies which had already begun to intimidate and had begun to use what was termed magic for various objectionable ends. So that there was nearly always a society among these Pueblos regarded with fear by the other medicine or culture groups. These societies were certainly secret orders. And we know from the mysterious rituals involved in the snake dance and in other of their magical rituals, as Dr. Loomis pointed out, miracles of many kinds, things that would be equal to anything attributed to a Hindu magician, were performed in the kivas and in the holy places of these medicine societies. The priests were able to make the sun shine at midnight. They were able to levitate rocks. They were able to reproduce all kinds of phenomena, thunderstorms, and things of that nature within the structure of their lodge. And their dancing feather ceremonies are well known. Even today, in some of the Navajo reservations, you can see the dancing feather ceremonies. The magic was involved in most of the ritualism of these societies. Also, the great medicine societies performing the rituals such as the Abachai or the great chant, medicine chant, shooting chant, the deer chant, the use of the sand paintings, the development of the cult of the Kachinas, or the little gods that come down from the mountains. All of these things we find fairly well developed, particularly in the areas where the community-dwelling Pueblos meet the remnants of the old southwestern Plains Indians. In substance, we have much evidence of the religious ritual, and we have almost all of the basic values involved in the initiation rites of ancient times. Throughout the world, whether it be Greece or Rome, Egypt, India, or America, the initiation rites originally involved citizenship in the tribe, the nation, or the community. This citizenship had to be won by both boys and girls. And in most of the primitive ritualistic societies, both the boys and girls were initiated or had their own societies to carry them from childhood to maturity. Each group was instructed in the responsibilities of manhood or womanhood and initiated into a great deal of traditional knowledge that would be useful and necessary, and perhaps most of all initiated into a way of life in harmony with the teachings that had descended to them orally from their ancestors or from the spirit. American Indian religion did involve a great deal of spiritism, a great deal of communion with nature. It's a listening to the voices of the old and the trees and those who had gone before. The Indian did his vigil on every emergency of life, and each of these vigil experiences was like a small rite of initiation. The principal rite, however, depended for its performance upon circumstances. The lodge could either be built as the meeting was built, with its 3 rooms and its journey from west to east, with its hazards, with its symbols, and with its final communication of esoteric instruction and the bestowal of citizenship. Also, in this case, the bestowal of the medicine mystery, by which the person became, theoretically at least, capable of leading his life from his own soul. The Indian way of life was, as one has expressed it, a leading from within. He lived, for the most part, more or less isolated. He had very little contact with any except his own tribe. His entire solution to every emergency that arose had to be from within. So the whole religious mystery of the American Indian and of the Central American Indian also, in a more sophisticated manner, was this development of the leadership from within. Some of these Indians definitely did use narcotic herbs to create trances and dreams. In the ghost church cult, hypnosis was introduced, and in many other groups, magnetism, spiritism, and other beliefs and doctrines which we attribute to Europe or to other parts of the world were in use at a very early time. These forms of knowledge seemingly were innate. They were something that came to people as they grew or unfolded. They did not have to receive them by direct transmission from someone else, but perhaps they could have. This is the point that is still very difficult to clarify. So the Plains Indian that had no special medicine house, that had perhaps no cultural tradition to build one, simply permitted the true seeker to go out into the wilderness and pray. This perhaps is the oldest search for God that we know, through prayer and fasting. And he went out and he created his little circle of prayer sticks, and he lit his pipe, and he burned it to the 4 corners of the world, and he seated himself upon the good earth and sat almost in a Buddha-like posture, and there simply waited with his hands loosely in his lap, his eyes nearly closed, his head bent, sitting alone under the stars, waiting to hear the voice of his God. And his prayer was always the same: Father, show me the way. And he would listen. And perhaps he would hear nothing. But if he did not, he would continue his vigil, day after day, night after night. He would fast and pray, until sometimes he collapsed with exhaustion.